So picking up right where we left off, we have this standard form equation, and we're going to find the x-intercept by setting y equal to 0, and then we're going to find the y-intercept by setting x equal to 0 and solving both. So here's our standard form equation. Let me rewrite it right here, but instead of my y, I'm going to put 0. So I have my equation 2x minus 12y equals 6, but notice I put parentheses instead of y, and I'm going to plug in the 0 right in there, and 12 or negative 12 times 0 is still 0, so you could just scratch it out and you'll have the equation 2x equals 6. Now this is exactly the reason why I say you could just cover up the y. You see, if you just cover up the y, it's going to look like this exact equation, 2x equals 6, the way it says right here, 2x equals 6. Now for the work over here, all you got to do is cover up the x's, and you'll have your new equation, negative 12y equals 6. That's what you're going to end up with down here. But let me actually not do the covering up. Let me show all the work here. So for the y-intercept, you're going to set x equal to 0. So you're going to write 2 parentheses minus 12y equals 6, and we are plugging in 0 for x. So we're going to end up having nothing right here, and it's going to be your new equation that just says negative 12y equals 6. And that's exactly what you would have if you were to cover up the x. You have the equation negative 12y equals 6. So you could just cover up one at a time later on when we get really good at this. But right now I do want you to show your work, Adrian. So let's continue solving on both of these. On the left side, sorry, I probably should have done this whole thing first. On the left side, let's divide by 2. And divide by 2, you're going to get x equals 3. That's the x-intercept. If you want it as a coordinate, your x value is 3. Your y value is 0 because that's what you set originally, the y value being 0. Yeah, on the other side, you're going to end up with the fraction. Let's divide by negative 12. Divided by negative 12, you're going to end up with y equals negative 1/2, because 6 over negative 12 is really negative 1/2 when you reduce it. It's not negative 2, but it is negative 1/2. So the coordinate there, if you wanted it as a coordinate, your x value is 0, your y value is negative 1/2 or negative 0.5. Let's go to both of these coordinates and graph them. The coordinate 3, 0 is 3 on the x, 0 on the y. There's the coordinate 3, 0. Let's go to the coordinate 0, negative 1/2. 0 on the x, you stay at the origin, negative halfway down. Right here is where your coordinate will be, the y-intercept at y being negative 1/2. So this is where it crosses the y-axis. And now that you have those 2 points, you could simply draw the line right through them, put arrows, and you're done. Now again, you could look at the pattern. If you want to extend it this way, it went halfway up and 1, 2, 3 over. So right here you could go halfway down and 1, 2, 3 over to get that perfect dot right there. And if you connect the dots, you have the perfectly straight line that we want. Okay, so let's move on. There's going to be other types of questions that you're going to see on tomorrow's quiz. Also possible questions for this section. Right here we have find the y-intercept. Now notice it doesn't say x and y, it just says y-intercept. So how do we find the y-intercept? Set x equal to 0 and solve. So let's take this equation, set x equal to 0. So you're going to have negative 9 times 0 plus 8y equals 16. And we know negative 9 times 0 is 0. So you really have the equation 8y equals 16. So what do? Divide by 8. Divide by 8. Y equals 2. And that's my y-intercept value. Okay. Now, I think on the quiz, on these, I'm going to ask you to give me an actual coordinate. So what's my actual coordinate going to be? 2. It's going to be 0 for x, 2 for y. That's my coordinate. Number 2, it says rewrite the following equation in standard form. Remember, standard form is capital AX plus capital BY equals capital C. The capital letters are to remind you, help you remember that you don't want decimals, you don't want fractions, you want nice numbers. It doesn't matter if they're positive or negative. So anyways, we don't want fractions. So what would be the first thing you do? Multiply everything by 3. Okay, so let's go times 3, times 3, times 3. So the fraction's gone now. We're going to end up with 12x minus 3 equals 2y. Now, if I want this equation that no longer has fractions in it, if I want it in standard form, that means I want x's and y's on the left side of the equal sign, and I want the number by itself on the right side. So how about this? Let me get rid of, or what do you guys want to move? What do you guys want to move? The 3? Okay, so let's move the 3, the negative 3, by doing the opposite, adding 3. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. What I do to one side, I do to the other side. Remember, whoa, not y. Remember, you want to get, sorry about that. You want to get the number on the right side. That's a c value. Okay, so let me rewrite this. So far we have 12x equals 2y plus 3. So for my final step, to get it in ax plus by equals c, I need to get the y, this y, I need to move it to the other side. So what would I do to get rid of that 2y? Subtract 2y. 2y take away 2y is 0y's. It cancels out. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. Take away 2y. As you can see, these are not like terms, so you need to rewrite it. And that will be your answer in standard form. Our answer is 12x minus 2y equals 3. And that's it. There's no need to multiply everything by -1 because the a value is positive. What other type of question could you see on tomorrow's quiz? Number 3, find the x-intercept, right? There's going to be questions where I ask you to find both the x and the y-intercept and graph it, but there's going to be a couple where I just say just find the x-intercept. So how do I find the x-intercept? Set y equal to 0 and then solve. So I really have negative 7x plus 13 times 0 equals negative 28. So I'm plugging in 0 for y. 13 times 0 is nothing. So I really have just negative 7x equals negative 28. And of course, right there to solve that, all you need to do is divide by negative 7, divide by negative 7. So our x is what? 4, positive 4. Negative divided by negative is positive. Now, like I said, I think I'm going to ask you specifically on the instructions to give me the x-intercept as a coordinate. So the coordinate would be what? Yep, x value is 4, y value is 0. So 4, 0. And that's it. Down here, let's not do, go ahead and scratch this out. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. That's about it for tomorrow's quiz. On the back side of this handout, we have some practice graphing by rewriting in standard form, then finding the x and y intercepts. So, I mean, think about question 1. If I asked you to graph it by changing it to function form and then doing an xy table, that would take a long time. You'd first have to get y by itself, so you'd have to get rid of x, move it over. You'd have to make an xy table. You have to plug in 3 easy numbers like 0, 1, and 2. You got to do that's like 3 different math problems. So instead of doing the xy table, it's good that we know this method of finding the x and the y intercepts. Let me set it up. X int, y int, squiggly line. Maybe some notes to myself, like how do I find the x-intercept? How do I find the x-intercept? You set y equal to 0. How do you find the y-intercept? Set x equal to 0. Of course, this is, I mean, it's not necessary for you to write this down. That's why I put in a little cloud. It's something that you need to know, though. If you don't know this, you're not going to get it. So I want to set y equal to 0. That's kind of like covering up the y and just looking at what's left over. What do I have left over? X equals 2, right? But let me show my work, because tomorrow, on tomorrow's quiz, I want you to show your work. X plus y equals 2. The y value is going to be 0. We're setting it equal to 0. So what do we have left? We really just have x equals 2. And guess what? We're done. The y-intercept, set x equal to 0. So instead of x plus y equals 2, I have parenthesis plus y equals 2. And I'm plugging in a 0 for x. So that's just 0. I have y equals 2. And those are my x-intercepts and y-intercept values. Okay? So, I mean, I could write it as a coordinate. If I ask you for a coordinate, please give it to me as a coordinate. But right here, all you got to do is go to the x-axis, cross at 2, put a dot right there. and go to the y axis and go to the value of 2 and put a dot right there. And then just connect your dots and you graph the line. If you want your line to be longer, just look at your 2 dots and make a pattern. From one dot to the other, you went down 2 and over 2. So if you kept going down 2 and over 2, you could make that line a little longer. Or you could go backwards, right? Over 2, up 2, over 2, up 2, over 2, up 2. So you can make the line as long as you want by figuring out the pattern that's going on. Then you could draw your line straight through all those points, put arrows on it, you're done. Let's take a look at number 3. So we know that we're supposed to do the x-intercept, y-intercept, squiggly line, show the work, right? But let's do the shortcut. Even though on tomorrow's quiz I want you to show your work. Let's do the shortcut. Let's cover up the y. So to find my x-intercept, you set y equal to 0, and that's exactly why I'm covering up the y. Let's pretend that this is the equation negative 2x equals negative 6. So that means that my x-intercept is what? If I solve that? Positive 3, right? Yeah. Now, to find my y-intercept, I'm going to set x equal to 0. So it's like covering that up, and it's like looking at this simple equation. 3y equals negative 6. I'm going to divide by 3, divide by 3. Y equals what? Negative. So my y-intercept is negative 2, and I'm done. I already graphed it, right? I didn't show any work. But I already graphed it because it crosses the x at 3. So it crosses the x at 3, and it crosses the y at negative 2, which is right here. So, I mean, I'm done. I could just draw my line right through it. But of course, I don't want to just see the answer, right? On tomorrow's quiz, I want you to actually show me the work. X-int, y-int, squiggly line. How do you find the x-intercept? You set y equal to 0. How do you find the y-intercept? Set x equal to 0. So you're going to rewrite this equation. You're going to plug in 0 for y. Plugging in 0 right in there. And we're going to rewrite the equation again on the y-intercept side. And we're going to plug in 0 for x. So there's my equation, negative 2x plus 3y equals negative 6. But instead of x, I put parentheses. I'm going to set the x that used to be there. I'm going to make that a 0 now. So I'm plugging in a 0. And let's solve both of these. On the left side, the 3 times 0 is 0. So I really just have the equation negative 2x equals negative 6, which means x equals 3 when I divide both sides by negative 2. Now on the other side, that cancels out. I have 3y equals negative 6. Divide both sides by 3. I'm going to get y equals negative 2. And that's my y-intercept value. And if you go to those x and y-intercept values, you're going to get the graph that we got originally just by doing it in our heads, by covering up the x term and then the y term. Now there are more challenging questions, like number 5. It's not in standard form, so you have to rewrite it in standard form. I want you to rewrite it in standard form. So you would have to subtract 2y, and that would cancel out. Rewrite it in standard form. 4x minus 2y equals negative 8. And then you could do the x-int, y-int, show your work, and get the x and y-intercept values. So I'm going to stop right there. There's really not going to be that much graphing. I will make you graph maybe 1 or 2 with function form using an XY table. I will make you graph 1 or 2 with standard form, making a x-intercept and y-intercept, finding those x-intercepts and y-intercepts. And there will be a lot of change this equation to a function form equation. Change this equation to a standard form equation. There's going to be a lot of that. Typo on 7, guys. I messed up on 7. I guess we could make this a y. Then it'll work out.